All right. There you go. Intro music, right? There you go. That'll get you up in the morning if you need some music to start your day. Well, we are live, and hi everyone, and welcome back to Everything Expedition Live. I'm Tiffany Dent, travel advisor, explorer, and CEO of Tiffany Dent Dream Vacations. So, if this is your first time joining, this is your series it's your front row seat actually to the most fascinating corners of the world and a rare opportunity to hear directly from the visionaries shaping the future of expedition travel. So we've had 2 incredible episodes so far, and the response from the community really just continues to amaze me. So I am thrilled to keep building that momentum with conversations that really demystify expedition travel and connect you to the people, like my guest today, that are making it extraordinary. So Everything Expedition Live, it really brings you that insider access to experiences that most travelers don't even know exist, right? So whether that's Antarctica, Amazon, Antarctica, or the Arctic and the Galapagos, each of these episodes really features industry leaders who are redefining what it means to explore. So my goal remains the same, is that you'll walk away inspired and informed, and most importantly, connected to our growing community of expedition enthusiasts. So come for the content, stay for the community, and whether you are expedition curious or you're already planning your next adventure, you are here in the right place. So I am super excited today to introduce our next guest, someone who brings a very unique perspective from decades of experiential travel. Brent from National Geographic Lindblad Expeditions. Welcome. So Brent is the regional sales director for National Geographic Lindblad Expeditions, and really someone who truly understands how to create these magical travel experiences. So he's had an incredible 28-year career at the Walt Disney Company, and he was actually part of the opening of the Disney Cruise Line, consulted sports clients at Disney Institute, and led group and convention sales. And he also cultivated international group business with Cirque du Soleil, which I saw my first Cirque show last week, which was awesome. So that is really something special. And I think you truly understand how to create wonder. So now you are at Lindblad, you oversee travel advisor relations, and you bring that same level of commitment and excellence to that guest experience, which I know we're going to talk about in regards to expedition cruising. So you are based out of Orlando, which I know, which you live with your wife and 2 kids, and you really have a passion and expertise for helping travelers discover the extraordinary. So I am super excited today to have you as a guest, and we are going to dive in to the world of National Geographic Lindblad. And welcome, Brent.
Awesome. Tiffany, thank you so very much for having me. I'm really, really delighted to be here. Thank you.
Yes, I can't wait for this. I can't wait for this conversation.
Yeah.
And, I think this is a very personal conversation for me because I actually had my very first experience on an expedition cruise was last October with Lindblad to the Galapagos. And that trip really inspired me to move my agency really in this direction of helping and really focusing on expedition travel. So I cannot wait for the conversation.
Awesome.
All right. So I know we've got a few slides to pull up here that are just going to be kind of our background music, right? There's such great images and pictures. And so we're going to kind of chat as we go along here. So let's get into it. So you've been in the business a long time, right? Nearly 30 years, and all sort of in this transformational kind of travel. So what drew you to the world of expedition?
Yeah, I mean, I joined in January, and to be honest with you, Tiffany, I didn't know very much about expedition. I knew a number of people that had worked at Disney and was at Lindblad, and said, "Hey, the culture is very similar, and we think you'd be a great fit here at National Geographic Lindblad Expeditions." And so I came over. And what I found fascinating was I came over thinking I was well traveled. I came over thinking, I've been to Europe, whatever, 15 times or whatever it is. And that was the first time, honestly, I ever heard anybody go to Antarctica. I mean, that was just in January. I had never considered going to Antarctica. And I'll be honest with you, since I've been in this role, every single person that talks about Antarctica, not one person says, it was okay. Every person says it was the most transformational trip of my life. It was incredible. And when you hear words like that about a destination that's kind of mysterious, you're like, I'm in, I gotta go. And then once I started seeing videos and talking to guests that, you kind of have this stereotype of Antarctica, like, it's going to be negative 1,000 degrees and everybody is, walking around, like snowmen. But then you start to realize, there's different seasons of Antarctica. So, it's kind of you got kind of the ice time, which is like November, December. And then one of our most popular for guests is going down to that January, February, March, because that's when the penguins are born. That's when that area, that region of the world comes to life. So for me, when I started learning about those things, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is incredible. And having a company that takes you to these remote places is really, really special. So while most of my career, was at Disney and focused in on, even at Disney Cruise Line is a good example of kind of the excitement of the ship, Lindblad focuses in on the excitement of the destinations of where we're going.
Well, you said two things actually that just struck me. One, I had almost the exact same experience, getting into, I've owned my company here for 2 years. And prior to that, I also considered myself a very well-traveled person, right? I have lived in other countries. I've been to 20 plus countries, and I had never really heard of expedition type of travel, right? Yeah. So same thing, of course, like you kind of hear Antarctica, but no concept of what that actually is like, from how you get there, the guest experience, what that actually means. Like, so if you and I, very well-traveled people, right, had that same experience, I know there are so many people, out there like that. And I did want to comment on your weather in Antarctica, because same thing, I think you think Antarctica, I've got to, like, we are just, we are 20, 30 below. Yeah. When you actually look at the temperature, if you grew up in a Midwest winter or an East Coast winter or in Alaska, it's very similar. Yeah, exactly. The temperature is very similar, if not even warmer, depending on when you go. So I think that's also a misconception, right? It's like, it's so frigid, you can't even do anything. Well, you look at some of the pictures and images, and people are having their cocktail out on the deck right there, looking at the icebergs go by. I'm sure they're a little chilly, but they're not freezing, right?
Yes, yes.
So let's talk a little bit before we kind of get into all the detail around, Lindblad itself, kind of the company, the history, the legacy of the founders. If you could talk about that story a little bit and kind of what sets the company apart from, there's a lot of expedition companies out there, right? And, I know it's never, one versus another. Everyone has something different to offer, but Lindblad is truly one of the pioneers of expedition travel. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about the story around that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really, really powerful because, and there's a through line I'm sure that we'll cover throughout our time together today, that Lars Erik Lindblad in 1958, founded the company, and his sole mission was, hey, I want to take people to the most remote places on Earth. So when they go there, they're like, wow, inspired to protect and preserve those places. And I mean, that's incredible. I mean, that's an incredible, when we think about, aspirational purposes, that's it. And so in 1966, next year we'll be celebrating 60 years since we took the first group of tourists ever to Antarctica. I mean, before it was just penguins and scientists.
Right.
And, Lars Erik said, I want to take guests there so they can see, touch, smell, be a part of the culture in Antarctica. And so he did that in 1966. Then the following year in 1967, took the first group of tourists ever to the Galápagos. And, we're going to talk a lot about Galápagos. I'm sure, people are drawn to that, with us. And what I really appreciate is, this wasn't a consulting company telling us, hey, Lars Erik, you should go to the Galápagos. This was a place where it's deeply personal for the company. He even took his own money to be able to to pay for the salaries of the first two park wardens at the Galápagos National Park. So the first two kind of park rangers, he paid for them. And so those standards that he set up in 1967 continue to today. So that's something we're very proud of as a company. And it's exciting that there are other people that are saying, hey, we want to take guests to these remote destinations as well too. And, I think, selfishly, of course, we're like, hey, we pioneered this. But I think the more people that are in the expedition space, the more guests that are going to these places, they get an appreciation that they definitely didn't have before they went on the trip.
And it's so true. And again, you mentioned, we'll probably talk a fair bit about the Galapagos, but even though we're talking about the Galapagos, I think the themes around it, this is not a company that just talks about it. Like I experienced, you talk the talk, you walk the walk. And what you said about, the care and really, for the community and the people there, I got to see that firsthand. And I've got some great stories around what that really meant. And so you just feel that spirit, right? All in that trip and all in that location and the love for that place. So it is exciting. And again, it's not something you guys are just saying, you are living that out. And it is very true. So, you guys, although we're talking about the Galapagos, we've mentioned Antarctica, you go lots of places.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think for us, it's like Antarctica and the Galapagos are kind of the two big draws. I mean, most people, those are two, for a living, I talk to guests, I talk to advisors, I talk to travel agency owners, and those are the biggest ones. Those are where people are saying, oh my gosh, I've always wanted to go to Antarctica. It's my seventh continent. Galapagos, people have heard about it, really want to go to this, incredibly well-preserved place. And then, other people, look at it and say, oh my gosh, maybe they've gone to those places with us and say, well, I sure like to go see polar bears. And so we go to Svalbard, we go up to Iceland, go see puffins, go to Greenland, enjoy, those areas of the world, the North Pole, doing the Northwest Passage. And then the other two that I was really fascinated by was, one is Baja. And I asked, a travel leader who was, again, we joke that you and we think that we're well-traveled. Right. This is one of those people that have literally been all over the world. And I said, what's special about Baja? And, he stopped and looked, he looked me in my soul. And he just said,
he saw right through you.
Yeah. He goes, Brent, I am telling you, the day you are eyeball to eyeball with a gray whale, it will change your life. And I just remember taking a step back and it gave me chills. And I just thought, wow. And so I think for some people too, particularly here in the United States, they might say, oh my gosh, I don't want to go all the way to, Antarctica, but I'll stay in North America and go to Baja. That sounds cool.
Yep.
And then I think Alaska is another draw because certainly, so many people have been to Alaska. And I think that is wonderful. But I do think people look at us saying, Lindblad's got a couple of incredible advantages that others don't. Number one, we have small ships. So our largest ship is 148 passengers.
That's incredible.
140, in this era where ships are kind of battling for, I've got 7,000 guests. I'm going to have 8,000. We're like, no, we want to keep it small. And I think that small ship experience people are drawn to. I do think that, the ability that our ships that are in Alaska are flagged United States. So what's great about that is if you've been to Alaska, most ships aren't flagged US. So you have to stop in Canada or you have to start in Canada. So for us, you've got the ability to go fly right into Alaska, start your expedition. And then the third thing that people are drawn towards is our expedition leaders that are on board the ship are the ones that are taking you on activities, taking you on the shore excursions, leading you in hikes throughout your entire week. So you're not doing one travel company one day, another travel company the others. And where that's really helpful is for those people that are there to learn. Maybe they thought, I forgot to ask that question about the grizzly bear. Well, guess what? Chad is on board all week. You can ask him at breakfast. You can ask him at dinner. And I think that's something that's a big appreciation. And then the last thing I'd say about Alaska, along with those other 5 that we talked about, that's really important is we have family programs. And I think that's something that people look and say, oh, wait a minute. I can go to the Arctic or Galapagos or Baja, and you're going to have a program for my family. So my kids are going to learn from National Geographic.
Yeah.
I mean, for parents, that's a game changer.
It is. And, I think that is so unique. And, I got to experience that firsthand on the Galapagos trip. And we only had one kid on board, and he was like the star of the sailing. I tell you what, every expedition leader knew him, every guest knew him. And you guys make such a big deal of that experience. And I know we'll probably dive a little bit deeper into the whole family programming here in a little bit, but there are so many special things that, in addition to just the education, that you do to make those kids feel special and a part of the whole experience. And there's prizes, and there's Zodiac driving lessons, and they get a license. I mean, we were like, can the adults go too? Like, this is super fun. So I think that is something that it's like, if you know, but if most people don't know. And I think seeing that firsthand, and this kid was 12 years old, and I swear he, every morning, right, just lit up. He was having dinner with everyone knew his name, right? Yeah. It was like he was the star of the show. But one thing I wanted to ask, I know we kind of jumped right in, and we're all, we're excited about expedition, but expedition is one of the fastest growing segments in travel holistically. Why do you think that is?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, expedition appeals to well-traveled people. And, they've been to the Caribbean, 48 times, and they got their hair braided 35 times. They've done kind of the mass market things. And I think small, intimate, immersive, experiential, that's the trend. That's been the trend for many years. And you're just seeing that more in travel. And I think that's something that's been really special, is that people are saying, hey, what can I do that can really immerse myself into these really remote places? And I do think there's a little bit of, for some, they might say, hey, I want to put something cool on Instagram. But the majority of our guests are like, I just really want to go to sail through the Nile. I want to go through the Amazon. I want to go to Egypt because I've learned about these places, and I want the best in the world. National Geographic, I want their people to lead me. And I think that's where people are like, this is incredible that here's a company like Lindblad that is taking you to the places that you used to read about in the National Geographic magazine. I mean, that's unbelievable.
Yes. And so on the intro slide, the picture I have, which is like, now this is the picture I use. It is sitting on 100-year lava flow. And that picture was taken by one of your photographers, a National Geographic photographer. And the fact, when I even say that out loud, I just feel like this coolness factor come over me, like, holy cow. And it's interesting when they do it, because it's like, I had someone take it with my iPhone, then the National Geographic photographer took it, and between the sun and the angle and it's like night and day what they're able to do. And I know we're getting into more of the onboard experience, but one thing I did love is they actually take time in the evening and throughout the day, the photographers, and give you all these tips and tricks about how to take your pictures even better. Like, from your iPhone, right? So like, those are just like things I never would have expected to happen. And it does change your photos night and day, right? So you're literally hearing from the experts on how to take your photos better. And this is, I mean, again, it's the pictures you see in National Geographic, and they're teaching you how to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a big draw for, if it's your iPhone, or, you're inspired to take great pictures from National Geographic and you're bringing your own gear on. Yes. And so if you're bringing on your camera, and because you want to take an incredible picture of a polar bear or a puffin or a blue-footed booby, you've got someone, all of our expeditions have got a certified photographer on board that can help you take better pictures with your own camera. And I think that's a big draw for people that want to take better pictures. Maybe they're hobbyists of photography. So that's something that's a nice draw as well.
So you talked a little bit about the partnership with National Geographic, and Disney, right? And so how does that all fit together, and what does that mean for the guest?
Yeah, I mean, I look at it in a couple of ways. Several years ago, I think about 6 or 7 years ago, Disney purchased a number of assets from the Fox Corporation, and part of that was the for-profit division of National Geographic. Meaning you still have the National Geographic Society based in Washington, D.C., but they need to make money. So Disney bought that entity, which was really smart because then they're able to use that to put it on Disney Plus, to be able to extend the reach of, the great things that National Geographic does worldwide, to be able to drive interest in that brand. And for us, we at Lindblad, we've been working with National Geographic for 20 years. We just re-upped for another 20. And so last year, we changed the name of our company to National Geographic Lindblad Expeditions. And part of that was all of our owned and operated ships we renamed. So it's, National Geographic Endurance, National Geographic Endeavor 2. But when I look at the center of this, and again, I come from 28 years of Disney.
Yep. You know that company.
Yeah. One of the things that I was really impressed with is Lindblad's almost Disney focus on creating a world-class guest experience. And that was something that, I think some people may stereotype the word expedition and they might think, it's not luxury, or, I'm going to be on a boat like the SS Minnow. That's not the case. First of all, the ships are really premium. The second thing too that I would mention is that when it comes to a guest experience, it's not just, what kind of linens do you have in your bed? It is, I think, the high touch nature of the staff on board. And I'll give you a good example of that. When I flew, my wife and I, we went to the Galápagos and we flew into Ecuador. First time to Ecuador, and it was so comforting. And that's the only word I can say is it was so comforting that you walk off from customs at the airport, and there you've got two people from Lindblad greeting you, helping you with your bags. And then those two people put us on a van themselves, drove us to the hotel, got us checked in, made sure we knew where we were going to have breakfast tomorrow morning, and said, hey, listen, put your bags tomorrow morning outside of your hotel room door. We're going to take those bags and we're going to magically put them in your cabin. And then on the way back, it was the same experience. Every touch point along the way, Lindblad was there to walk me through the airport, to show me where to check in for the airline, stood with me, then physically walked us over to where to check in for security. And again, for some people, you might say, that seems too much. It's pretty nice when you're in a country you don't know. And I think that was something that really was, it doesn't cost us any more money, but it's that kind of high touch feel of, these people are taking care of me. I'm not flying into a foreign country that I've never been to. I don't need to be worried. I've got staff there that are here to take care of me. So that was one example of the guest experience. One other one, Tiffany, just to point out that I think I was really surprised to learn, is that if you look at some of our itineraries, they're very, we'll say vague, right? It's not like, hey, today's Thursday, so we must be in Nassau.
Yeah.
There's a lot of moments on the expedition where the captain of the ship and the expedition leader each day meet. And this is real world. There might be a pod of whales on one side of the island. They're like, we're going to go over there. Now, if you're on a regular cruise, guess what? You can't. You've got to go into Nassau. You got to go into that port, but not with Expedition, not with Lindblad. We're saying, what can we do even when we're out on the water to make it an incredible, memorable experience for all of our guests? And I think that's just another example of just taking that extra step to make sure that our guests are seeing things, experiencing things that you cannot do on a larger cruise.
You obviously you're so right? You experience this, but again, as someone who is a travel advisor, but also a guest, right? Because I experience it too. As you're talking, I'm just imagining when I landed in Guayaquil, right? And you get your bag, and not only were they there waiting for you, they were in their Lindblad polo with their name tag, with their sign. You're right. The word comforting is probably the best way to explain it. And then at least for the Galapagos, but then there's some other destinations where this is true as well. You potentially have to take another charter flight, right, in order to board the ship. And so even on that, right, the whole charter typically is for, those of us that are going, the guy who sat next to me, we're just chit chatting. Oh, he happened to be the expedition leader. So on my flight, you know, on the charter flight, he's just telling me everything. So I felt like not only were you taken care of, like I'm sitting next to the expert on this flight. Like I get to I get to learn before we actually do this. And then even when you land there, everything is done for you. You're not in the same line with everyone. You're just, you know, going about your business with the whole group. And so it's very, I think the Galapagos, Antarctica, it's overwhelming to people, the logistics of it, right? Like how do I get there? Where do I go? Where do I fly in? What flight do I take? Lindblad helps you with all of that. They take care of all of that. You literally are packing, and once you go, you're taken care of the whole time, which I think is phenomenal. The other thing you mentioned too was, you know, the crew and the captain and the team kind of meet around, you know, where, you know, if there's whales over here, we're going to do this. The other thing that impressed me is the open bridge. I went up and talked to the captain and I interviewed him. I'm like, what's the funniest questions you get? Right. And so I've got a video on that if you're interested, but you know, they're super open, right? They're kind of telling you how everything works. You can ask them anything, you can go up there, which that's crazy, right? Like what an experience.
Yeah. I really want to underscore that because I don't think on Royal Caribbean, they've got an open bridge policy where at any time, at any hour, you can walk to go see the captain. You'd probably be thrown in the jail. But for us, we encourage that. And, you know, anytime someone like you mentions that, I think instantly to my father-in-law. My father-in-law is a Navy veteran. And I just think, how special would that be for him to be able to go in and talk to the captain, talk to the staff about what's it like, you know, navigating a polar class 5 ship through the ice of Antarctica, and what type of navigation equipment do they use? And those are the types of experiences. Again, not every guest is going to do that, but there are guests that are listening to this right now who are like, I want to do that. I love to boat. I was in the Navy. I would love to be able to ask those questions and talk to an expert that this is what they want to do. And I think that's emblematic of, on our ships, we're here for education. We want to create those sorts of moments where people are learning and furthering their knowledge of different areas in the world.
You know, and I think my dad, who recently passed away, was an Air Force and Vietnam veteran. And as soon as you said that about, I thought of him too, because it would like change his life, right? To be able to ask those questions. But the other thing I was so impressed with is any question you have about anything, the ship, the animals, the location, any scientific question, there was nothing that this team did not know. It wasn't like, I'll get back to you in 5 minutes, come find me at breakfast tomorrow. Like they knew the answer to everything. And so, and what I've also learned is to be a naturalist in some of these, like the level of certification and what they have to know to even to be able to work as that occupation on these ships is incredible.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I mean, I joke, these are not people that just graduated from art history and this is their summer job. You're all dealing with people that honestly have been dedicating their lives for 10, 20, 30 years. And they're really passionate about the places where we're going. You know, you've got people that have dedicated their lives to going to Greenland and they want to share, oh my gosh, let me tell you about the different plants, the wildlife. And they're open to any question, because what's fascinating to me is that you'll have people that, again, this is their bucket list. And so they're sitting there with incredible questions they are dying to ask. And you've got people that want to answer those questions. So that's something that's really, really special.
And, you know, from my personal experience, the other thing I was really impressed with, and to kind of underscore what you're saying about this is their life's passion, one of the expedition leaders in the Galapagos, you know, it's interesting because, and I think we have a map of the actual, let me get to that real quick so people can kind of, we're talking about the Galapagos, but we'll come back to this real quick here. It's, you know, you kind of think about it, oh, the Galapagos, it's a small island. Like there's a lot to go and see. And most of the actual locals, Galapagos, right, will never get to see these places that is their home. And the reason is because the only way to see it is by ship. You have to be with a certified professional from the parks area. And these are not cheap trips to go on. So most of the locals will actually never get to, unfortunately, see most of their home. And what was so special when on my sailing was one of the family members, I think it was, of the executive chef, there was space on board. And I guess when there's space on board, family members of the crew get to come on. So there was three family members that got to experience this, that then were on all the excursions with us. They were speaking Spanish. I speak some Spanish. So we were all communicating and talking. And it was to see them see their home.
Yeah, wow.
was incredible. And the other thing is one of the expedition leaders on our sailing, he actually had created, this was so interesting to learn. So if you are the valedictorian of one of the local high schools there, as valedictorian, you actually get to go on a Lindblad cruise in the Galápagos. And
Wow.
he was the one who created that for the school. And now he's the expedition leader. So when you talk about like the connection to the local, like I just had chills telling that story because it's so real, right? Like it's so real what they're doing. And I know we're talking about the Galapagos, but I know that's in many of the places that you sail.
Yeah. And I mean, I think, for people that are unfamiliar with the Galapagos, I like to explain it this way, because I've got a lot of friends and people have said, well, what's it like? I don't get it. Why do people want to go? And the way I describe it is, many people have been to Hawaii. And so I use that kind of as a reference point. I just said, imagine going to Hawaii before there were people.
Yeah.
And that's the best way I can describe it, because, the Galapagos, 97% of it is a national park. So it's like this. And there are no hotels. There are no t-shirt shops. There's no ice cream shops. There's no nothing. And I live in Orlando, where we commercialize everything. So to go to a place where there is none of it is incredible. And literally, you have to step over sea lions in order to get on your Zodiac. You're taking a look at, these, iguanas next to you. And it's really part of, here I am just stepping over the sea lion. They're just hanging out. And this to me is just, it was very humbling, because you realize, oh, we're part of something much bigger than ourselves, being in nature. And I think that's something too that I was really impressed with, and was a big surprise, is that I would think that, the Ecuadorian government would have said, oh gosh, we can make a bunch of money if we sold just one of these islands to a hotel chain. But they said, no, we want to preserve it. And I dug a little bit deeper to understand, and just so people have an understanding of those islands that Tiffany showed, there's something like, it's only like 100 people a day are allowed to visit those islands. 100 people a day. And then there's only, I think, 74 vessels approved to go to the Galapagos. So it's not like here in Florida where it's like, I got a boat, I can go wherever I want. That's not the case. It's really, really intentionally regimented and preserved. So when you go there, you're like, wow, this is how it's been for centuries, maybe millennia. And that's something that is really awe-inspiring. So when you're able to go and explore, this is a great example of, this could have been a picture, Tiffany, that you and I took, snorkeling.
I was going to say that.
They're like puppy dogs. They're coming up. I've had clients show me pictures where they're like nipping at their fin. Yes. It is like snorkeling there is like snorkeling in an aquarium. Yes. You are swimming with sea turtles and sea lions and incredible, beautiful species of fish. And everything is so well preserved. You just keep thinking like, oh, this has got to be a dream, but it's not. It is real life. So when people are looking for that type of experience that, okay, we're going to the Caribbean again, or going, this is so far beyond it, because you've got this experiential, opportunity that many don't have.
And I'm so glad you talked about, like, this is a picture that any one of us could have taken, because that's exactly right. Like they literally, right? They're coming up to your mast, they're coming up to your fin, and they're playing. It is like a puppy dog. That is that's such an interesting way to say it, because they are just playing with you. And yes, you're in a Caribbean-like setting, but I would agree, it's unlike anything you can imagine, right? At all. And so, these animals, they're not domesticated, right? So like, I share this picture and it's very similar to yours. They're all just right there, right? We even had people that you're supposed to say, I think it's like 6 feet away, but there's so many, sometimes you don't even realize that they're there, where you almost kind of trip over them, right? And so we were on a hike, and you're like, literally, when you talk about like you're one with nature, and you're in Mother Nature, and Mother Nature does what it does. We were on a hike. We come around this corner, and a mom had just given birth. Literally, the umbilical cord
Wow.
was still attached, and you're like,
Wow.
I am witnessing nature here firsthand,
Yes.
right? It's crazy. But like the picture with the tortoise, right? Like that looks like I photoshopped it. No, they're just now he's not moving very fast, right? But they're just right there. And
Yeah.
the same with the wildlife, the bird. That is not a close. I was basically in front of him, and they don't move. And
Yeah.
so they're just not scared, which is it's very hard to explain that, right, to
Yes.
people until you're there.
Yes.
So yeah. One thing I was going to ask you, which I feel like we kind of hit on it, but what do you think is the biggest misconception of expedition travel?
Yeah, I'll just use myself personally. I think there's probably a stereotype of, oh, this isn't going to be a premium experience. And it is. I mean, it is when you talk to the people, obviously I am paid to tell you how great everything is, but talk to others and just say, hey, what was your experience like? Go on Facebook. Maybe you've got people that have gone. And here's what they're going to tell you. They're going to say, oh my gosh, the food was incredible. And a lot of that too, just using food as an example, we source that locally. So we're not getting that shipped in. We're going to the markets in Galapagos. Or I was talking to somebody yesterday, and they're telling me we went with the chef on Lindblad, along with the hotel director, and went to a place in Greece where they source the bread for the ship and the vegetables. So they're bringing that on. So it's really fresh, and you're having those kind of culinary delights from the regions of the world where we're visiting. The other part too is just the rooms. It just reminds me of something just very, very not, I don't want to say the word luxurious, but it's premium. It's just, you're like, wow, this is nice. It kind of reminds me of like a JW Marriott, right? It's just, you're like, wow, you're very pleasantly surprised. But the highest part is the staff. It is that staff. The feedback I get from guests is, wow, by the second day, they knew my first name. They knew my kid's name. They are so focused and attentive to you to create a great experience. And those are things I would not have thought of when I think expedition. And I think that's something that is just a stereotype that we need to get over as an industry, to be able to say, oh, no. We're just immersing you more into the environment. All the accoutrements around the ship, the experience, the staff is world-class.
Yes. Yeah. And I couldn't agree with you more. I was surprised too, because again, you think, expedition, you're kind of like, am I rolling like Deadliest Catch here? Like what's happening here? And, from the food to the drinks to the accommodations, I think the only thing I heard on my trip, literally one person was like, I think I could have had I wish they had this specific bourbon. I'm like, if that the biggest complaint, right? And it wasn't a complaint. It was like this whole thing was fabulous. It's like, I think you hit the nail on the head there. And so, well, that actually leads into, I think, another good question is, who is the Lindblad guest, right? I mean, I feel like I can guess, but really, what are some of the attributes about who typically sails with you guys?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's a number of different things. I think that first, I do want to say your bourbon comment reminded me. We're all inclusive.
Yes.
We're all inclusive. And that's something that surprises people, because all of our alcohol is included, all of your activities, all your shore excursions, your Wi-Fi, all seminars, meals, everything's included. And that's something that really surprises people, because they're like, oh, because sometimes you go on a cruise, right? Especially if you go to Alaska, it might cost you $2,000 just to do a shore excursion.
Yeah.
And so when you realize, all that's included, and I don't have to sign up for anything.
Yeah.
There's some cruises where you got to sign up 120 days out. You got to be up at 6 o'clock in the morning to sign up. None of that here. But who this appeals to, I think, is kind of a lot of different types of people. But I think people that like to be outdoors, I think, is a key one. They're the hikers. They like to be, be active outside. Maybe they like to golf or boat, hike, take pictures. Generally well-traveled.
Yeah.
I like to say lifelong learners. These are people that maybe their professional background is being a doctor or a lawyer or a researcher, but they love to learn. That's something they love to read. They love to soak in knowledge. But the outdoor piece, I want to mention one thing. My wife and I like being outside, but we wouldn't consider ourselves like outdoorsy people.
Yeah.
This was probably the best vacation we've ever had. Just because with the activities that we have, it's like adult summer camp.
Yes.
It is, you're regimented. I mean, this is not the cruise, when we talk about who does this appeal to. If you're someone who says, hey, I want to get the drink package, sit by the pool and watch the belly flop contest, we're not the experience for you.
Mm-hmm.
We're the experience where, hey, I do want to be up at 6 o'clock in the morning. I want to have breakfast at 7. I want to do my first round of activities starting at 8 o'clock, come back. I want to do 2 more rounds of activities just in day 1. Mm-hmm. And those are the types of people that, can't stand still, want to learn more. They want to kayak, paddleboard, really explore the different areas as much as they can. So I think that's it. I think active is a big one. The other one too, I would say, Tiffany, and I'm sure your experience modeled this, is our guest is casual.
Yes.
Our guest is casual. There are other lines that they're more formal. And that's great. If you are someone who, hey, I want to be fancy and put on my fancy clothes when I'm on the water, great. We might not be the best fit for you. Mm-hmm. I remember walking into the dining room and a couple things struck me. Number one, my wife said, look at the women here. I didn't know where that was going. And she goes,
honey, are you sure? You want me to look?
She goes, look how many women in here have wet hair, ponytails, wet hair, slicked back. She's like, because you don't have 3 hours to get ready for dinner.
No.
You got people here that just want to be casual. I mean, look at the people that are there. They're in their Columbia sportswear. They might be in a polo shirt and shorts. They just are excited to be here, talk with like-minded people, learn, just be casual. And there are certain cruise lines that doesn't work. And I think that's what was really special about my experience and the types of guests that are with us. It's that kind of casual luxury, the casual premium experience.
I think that casual luxury, you hit the nail on the head, because you also can't take yourself too seriously. I think I have never laughed so hard in my life. And if the person who went with me is listening to this, the amount of times you have to shimmy in that wetsuit, especially if it's a snorkel day,
yes,
like, it's hilarious, right?
Yes.
And you don't look good, right? Because you got this whole outfit on, but it is so fun, and everyone is doing it, right? And so it's just the word casual, fun, active. The other thing, I think I've shared this with you, but I wasn't quite prepared for, and I'm an active person. I'm very similar. I love the outdoors, although I don't know that I would say like I'm an outdoorsy person, but I love being active. I was prepared for the 2 excursions a day. There were some days where there was 3, and it was like ding, ding, 6 a.m. morning hike. And of course I'm like, you're kind of like, what's going on? But I'm like, let's go. Right. Because you don't want to miss a thing. Like you don't want to be the person they come back. Guess what we saw?
Exactly.
And of course you don't have, everything's included. So you don't have to do all of them, but you don't want to miss anything. The other thing I wanted to say, it's active and, it's casual, but the touches of the luxury are there too. So like, although you're super active, like I went and had a coffee or a cocktail on the hammock and just laid there and did that, right? Like, why you have a few minutes of downtime. Or there was one night where they brought all the wine on the back deck, and there was, meat and cheese and appetizers, and, people had a nicer outfit on, whatever you want to call that. Maybe they buttoned their polo, who knows, right? But it was fun, right? And so it's this nice balance, I think, of that casual and luxury. You're not forsaking any comfort, any of your creature comforts at all.
Yes.
And so I think that's one thing that, until you experience it, like, you may be thinking like, okay, we're roughing it, and what does this look like? Or it's super dressy, right? And so it's not, right? So.
And Tiffany, I do want to share something else that as you're talking, you make me think about all these wonderful things. You're so good at this. One where that appeals is, so take this type of person.
Yep.
They want their kids, they want their grandkids to experience this. What we see a huge amount is multi-generational bookings. Because when we talk about these activities, right, and the families are on board, you can't be on your iPad when you're stand-up paddleboarding. you know, and there are parents and grandparents who are like, I want my kids to learn. I want my kids to be able to learn from National Geographic. And I think that's something that really appeals to grandparents to say, you know what, I want to create this experience for my grandkids and my kids that they're going to remember for the rest of their lives. They might even be part of our family program, this, Explorers in Training, National Geographic Explorers in Training, where maybe it clicks something for their granddaughter or their grandson, where they're like, you know what, I want to be a scientist. I want to be a naturalist. And they would never have had that thought had they not gone through that program. And I think that's something that's really special, is that we see a lot of multi-generational families coming on. And then conversely, solo travelers. This was something I was not really aware of in other realms of travel, but we've got a lot of guests who they, maybe they lost a spouse, or maybe their spouse is like, I'm not going to Antarctica. You can go. Mm-hmm. And we have special solo cabins on our ships. We have even the ones that go to Antarctica, they've got a balcony. So those are experiences that we can offer for those types of guests. So it really appeals to a wide range of people, but I do think it's those people that like to explore and like to be part of the environments where they're traveling to.
Yeah. And I know we talked about the kids program, and you just hit on it again. And I think even when I went to the Galápagos, I didn't take my kids. I've got, two, an 8 and a 10-year-old. Yeah. But when I got back, they were like, we read about that, right? So it's great that they recognize where they read, but to be able to go experience that is something totally different, right? Yeah. It changes. And I know that's a very special gift to be able to do something like this as a child. And like you said, I think that's why the multi-generational trips are so important, and I think becoming so popular, because your grandparents or your parents want to be able to experience this. Mm-hmm. And if you can get a kid out there and see the world, it changes who they are. It hands down changes who you are. Yeah. And so if you can give that gift to your family, I think it's one of the best gifts you could ever have.
Yeah, definitely.
Jeez. My gosh, I feel like we could just talk for hours here.
No kidding.
So I'm going to kind of move through these slides, because I do want to talk about, so yes, you've got, the Galápagos, the Arctic, Antarctica. I'm so glad you hit on Baja, because I do think that's very special and unique. But there are some things I think where, it's like, wow, you go here, right? So like you talk about like India, right? Mm-hmm. And so, I mean, some of these, we think these are far-fetched places, right? Antarctica, but you would never think of expedition to these other places. And so I'm going to kind of go through a couple of pictures here where we get to some of those. Oh, see, I know we're talking about, like, look at this amazing stuff. The onboard experience. Before we get to some of the other destinations, you mentioned this, and I think this is such a good stop here, right? Where you can see what this picture looks like. Mm-hmm. And this is what it looks like. So when you talk about the experience, the science hub, I thought that was super cool, right? So you come back and there is this place other than kind of the main area where you can go and see this. You can have those conversations. Mm-hmm. And so that was a really cool feature as well. And then, like you said, I'm joking about the wetsuits, although it was hilarious. There's nothing you have to prepare for, right? You guys have everything. So whether again you're Antarctica and you need your parka and your boots, or you're the Galápagos and you need your snorkel and if you were like an avid snorkeler, maybe you had your own equipment. Most of us were like, whatever you give me, which was perfect, right? Yeah. Everything is done for you, and it's super easy and comfortable.
Yeah, definitely. And these are great pictures of, some of the examples of some of our rooms, which is probably something that people didn't think of. And then this is a good one too, Tiffany, the lounge here, not only because, people love free drinks at happy hour.
Yes.
Throughout the day, but what I really appreciated was every single day, every evening before dinner, we bring the entire ship together. Now, again, for us, I mean, our biggest ship is only 148 guests. Most, experiences are only, 70, 80 people, but we bring everybody together. And we do that for a number of reasons. Number one, we kind of celebrate what we did that day. As you mentioned, for those, places where we've got more kids on board. Generally, it was interesting. You mentioned there was only one on your experience. Generally, they average about 15 to 20% of our ship are those guests under the age of 18. So maybe during this briefing, they're going to show an activity that they did during the day. But what I also really like about this is that they talk about what we're going to do the next day.
Yeah. Yeah.
They talk about, hey, let's talk about the hikes that we're going to do. They show you pictures. They show you video. And that's really important because I live in Florida where every hike is flat.
Yeah.
It's flat. Now, if you live in Wyoming, if you live in Colorado or California, your hikes are straight up a mountain. And so what was very nice is that they showed you pictures of, hey, here's what the hike's going to look like tomorrow.
Yeah.
Maybe that's something that you don't want to do. No problem. Here's 2 other options for you. And so I get a lot of people that will say, oh gosh, I'm worried about my ability level. And I said, we want to appeal to a variety of ability levels. So you're never going to be stuck on, oh my gosh, I'm on this hike and it's a 5-hour hike. Listen, if you need to opt out at any time, we've got staff that will take you back to ship, no problem. But what we do is we do have a number of activities. We have different options. So maybe it's a hike, a Zodiac ride, or maybe just laying out at the beach. And so we make sure we have it in writing to you, and we also walk you through that so you've got a good understanding of what the day is going to look like.
Yeah, that's such a good point. I actually forgot about that, but you're right. And so in addition to the number of excursions, in those excursions, the type of excursion and
Yes.
how active you are, or, I'm using the word mobility, right? But I mean, you may not want to go on that hike, and they kind of tell you how strenuous it is and what to bring. But yet you can still go. And like you said, sit on the beach, bring your book, be there with the sea lion, whatever. I think that's so important because it really does accommodate to every level. I just got to ask you a question on this slide. Where is this ship and how do I get in that? Because this is incredible.
No kidding. Yeah. So that's one of our polar class ships. I think that's the Endurance, where we do have the opportunity where you can sleep in that igloo. It's currently, I think it's a lottery system. So you put your name in the hat and they pull it out to see if you get the opportunity to sleep in there. Now, there is no heat. There is no bathroom. So you do need to get your towel on and walk to the bathroom. But imagine waking up and that's your view. Just absolutely spectacular. So that's something that is a guest favorite. So I need to figure out when I get the opportunity to go to Antarctica, I got to figure out how I'm in that igloo.
Yes. Well, I know we've got about 5-8 minutes here, and I want to kind of move into, Lindblad is sort of the pioneer, right, of this kind of travel. And, what you guys have built over the last, 50, 60 years is incredible. And you just kind of keep innovating and keep changing. And it's always like, well, what's next? Mm-hmm. And you guys recently had an announcement, which of something very innovative and interesting as far as what is next, which is river cruising. So can you talk a little bit about that? Of course, river cruising, which I do love, right? Because it's very, I personally call river cruising expedition in a sense of it's immersive, right? You are in that culture. There's a lot of similarities. I mean, yes, people are like, Antarctica, the Arctic expedition, but river cruising, again, they go to very remote places and it's really about the immersion. So I'm assuming with the parallels there, that's maybe why, you guys are getting into it, but I want to hear about that. And then I think what is going to be different with National Geographic Lindblad River Cruise, maybe compared to, what people are experiencing now.
Yeah. I mean, I think that, with our, we made the business decision to go, charter a ship called the Transcend Connect, which is a brand new ship, really modern, really sleek, luxurious ship. And it debuts next year. And so we're chartering this for 8 sailings. And Tiffany, what it comes down to is good companies, world-class companies, listen to their guests. Mm-hmm. Our guests said, we want to do the Rhine River and we want to do Europe. And, sometimes people think expedition, well, it's got to be, Antarctica, or it's got to be Arctic. I think if you use the word, instead of expedition, exploration, I want to explore, because we've been doing river for 40 years. I mean, we charter a ship to do the Amazon where it's only 28 people. We'll charter and do the Nile. We'll do the Mekong. I mean, so river is something we're very used to doing, but our guests were saying, what would the National Geographic experience look like in the Rhine River? And you can see some of these pictures here, which, remind me of just a high-end hotel. Mm-hmm. There is transcend. We met with their founders, and they're so excited because they put a big emphasis on wellness. They put a big emphasis on having these rooms that can open up so you can create suites, and you can have, quad occupancy, really special. But from the National Geographic perspective, we're chartering this. We're going to bring on our staff, our culturalists, our historians to give our guests an incredible view of the Rhine. We'll offer, excursion through Alsace, through the wine regions of France. We'll be doing the Black Forest. We'll be seeing tulips up in Holland. I mean, it's really amazing. And I think the other part that I'm really proud of is we're welcoming kids. I know there's some river lines who are like, oh, we don't want children. We do. And there are parents who are saying, I want my kids to go. I want my kid to be able to see this and to learn from experts, to learn from people that this is their passion, to be able to see different castles and different experiences within Europe. So we're really, really proud of this. So again, we're just doing it next year for 8 sailings. We are, as you may know, we do have, we're offering an air credit that on select European destinations, if you book your air through us, we're offering up to $2,000 in air credits. So it's a really neat opportunity. So this is a great plug. Contact Tiffany to learn more, the different destinations. We're happy to do that. India is another one. I mean, this sells out almost instantly. I mean, people want to go see India, do it in a different way, and do it on water. So that's something that we're excited about too.
Yeah, I think that's a very unique and special way to see it. And again, you think about just how we've explained, I think, expedition so far, the Galapagos, it's the same experience, right? In these places that, again, it's like very, very far away, but you want to feel like you're seeing everything, you're immersed in everything. And that, again, you basically come back and you've got this really comfortable, luxury place to stay, fabulous food, fabulous drinks, and you're not too far away from the next day, right? That's the other thing too. It's like these ships are small. So it's not like it's taking, once you have your excursion, either you're doing it by Zodiac or you're docked essentially right there, right? So whatever the day's excursions are, you're not spending hours trying to get to it. You're just going.
Yes. And I think the other thing too that we've kind of touched on, but just to spend a moment or two, when we talk about being in with the culture, I mean, our experiences, we're taking you to local farms. You get the opportunity to buy art from local artisans. You will be able to hear music and be entertained by people from that community. So, sometimes, you go to places, I'm using the Caribbean as an example.
Yeah.
Sometimes you go to the Caribbean and you're like, oh, well, now you're at this
Caribbean. If you have a trip booked there, we're not hating on it.
Yeah, no, it's great. But it's like you're kind of in that bubble of that resort that you might be in. With us, we want to take you to the schools. We want to take you to learn from the stories from the locals. And that to me is very different. That's a different experience than doing other destinations where you're just hanging out at a hotel. And our guests are saying, that's what's important to me. I want to hear the stories. I want to meet the families. I want to meet the farmers of these different places. And I think that's something that we really try to expose our guests to, because then they go back to America or their home saying, you know what, I want to do what I can to support those communities.
Well, I think that's a perfect segue into, kind of my final 2 wrap-up questions for you. So if they heard this, they heard us and heard this talk, and now they're like, either they're super excited or they're kind of excited, thinking like, I think I want to do this. Like, I feel like I want to dip my toe in. If someone is on the fence, what would your advice be to them?
Well, call Tiffany, and talk further. I mean, honestly, first, very candidly, I think that using a travel advisor, and Tiffany, you're, one that's got an incredible reputation, being able to talk to them about what's the best fit for me. Lindblad may not be the best fit. I think it is. I think it's the best fit for everybody. But talking to you to say, what other experiences are there? What other, opportunities are there for me? I think that's the best, because you have got such a resource of knowledge and a network of people that you can call upon to be able to say, hey, I've got a client, here's what they're looking for. is there a supplier? Is there a destination, an experience that would live up to what they're looking to do for their bucket list? I think we do an exceptional job. People tell us we have got some of the highest loyalty scores of any expedition line or any cruise line in the world, but we might not be for everybody. And I think using someone like yourself to save them a lot of time and to be able to help them find out, hey, what's the best experience for me and my family? I think that's the best way to go.
I love that. Of course, I support that. And I do agree that you guys do an incredible job because I've experienced it firsthand. So that is the truth right there. So we've talked about a lot, end to end, everything and all over the world, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, if there's one thing, sort of last parting words you can kind of say to the audience, or one thing you want them to take away, what would that be?
Yeah, I'd say give it a shot. I mean, I think what's special about us is that, right now we're booking all the way out to 2028. So there's some of these trips where you're like, this is my bucket list. I'm going to start saving a little bit each month in order to go. Mm-hmm. And if you were somebody who's like, I want to explore these incredible areas on Earth, I want to be led by someone that knows what they're doing, this is their life's work, I think this is an incredible experience. And especially if you've got family, to be able to come together as a family, put the iPads down, have an incredible bonding experience with everybody. I think it's an incredible way to spend time together. So I encourage you to learn more about, National Geographic, Lindblad Expeditions, anything else within the expedition space. I think is fantastic. And, Tiffany, you are an incredible resource for people that want to learn more about, expeditions or, other opportunities around the world. So I really, really appreciate you taking the time to host me today.
Oh, well, I just thank you so much for coming on. This was so incredible, right? And I love our shared Galapagos experience.
Yes.
But it's, you kind of, ended with it. It's, life is short, right? And so I think, you have to go while you can go.
Yeah.
And to be able to share this experience with your family, with your friends, or again, if you're a solo, you will have a new family when you get on board because it's so inviting and it's so welcoming. But if you can get to these places and if you can go, right?
Yes.
This is what makes our world a better place, in my opinion. I think traveling the world, seeing these places, having conversations with people that are similar to you in your interests, but also very different than you, right?
Yes.
That is what brings us closer together. And I think that's what makes this a better place. So if you can go, I'm happy to help. And Brent, this has been incredible. You're so fabulous. I'm glad I have a lifeline, a call line to you. If I've got anything, you're in my corner. So you guys should know that. If you need anything, Brent is on speed dial for me. So anyways, I cannot thank you enough for coming today. This has been great.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day.
All right. Bye.